Hey YouTube, it's your girl Dr. J, and I thought I would come back real quick and do another one because I said something in the video about allowing your child to move forward and not be hindered by their weaknesses and their disabilities. And my son, my oldest, was actually doing something with his homeschooling while I was making the video that really emphasizes this point. So I wanted to come back and talk about why I am such an advocate for audiobooks as an accommodation for children with dyslexia and really gifted children in general. And I would say probably most homeschoolers could benefit from audiobooks. First, let's talk about just the history of reading in general. People talk about reading is fundamental, but throughout large stretches of history, how people got information was through communication, the exchange of ideas, conversation, talking things out. The concept that in order to have a lot of knowledge, you need to be an avid reader, you have to get it by reading, that is a relatively new concept. Now, of course, if we didn't have books, we would be limited in how much we could know based on the type of people that we would have an opportunity to encounter in our lives. So the more opportunity you had to meet new people, different people, people that had knowledge that you didn't have, that would determine how much you had the opportunity to learn. But the same thing happens with books. People that have more exposure to books have a much larger knowledge base than people that have a limited exposure to books. The people that have a lot of exposure to books are generally going to be the people who would have a larger exposure to various types of people. Books are just another person's thoughts, ideas, research put in writing. But you would get that same information from someone if you sat down and talked with them. So I kind of get a bit frustrated when people assume that audiobooks or listening to a book is not as beneficial or not as educational as reading a book for yourself. That doesn't make sense, especially when you have a true, unabridged audiobook, which means all you have is someone reading that book word for word. There's, it's not like a narration or a reenactment. It's just someone reading the words. And I have found that this is so beneficial because it allows my children to take in so much more information than they would have had the opportunity to gain if they would have been required to read on their own. Because with my kids, it's not just dyslexia. That's not their only problem. They also have eye teaming, eye tracking, and eye convergence issues, which means that when they go to look at the words on the page, it's really hard for them to keep their eyes just on one line. My children sometimes see an independent picture in each eye, and that just makes reading just really, really overwhelming. But they have the capacity to take in information at a really high level, much higher than they can read. So, my oldest, he's 7, he's in the 3rd grade, and the audiobook that he was just listening to was Companion Animals, Their Biology, Care, Health, and Management. And he was listening to a chapter that specifically dealt with ferrets, because you guys know he's doing a research report on ferrets. Well, this particular book is used in undergraduate classrooms for students that are majoring in, they want to go into veterinary science. Okay. It is sometimes used in animal biology classes in high schools that have a really strong science track. So at 7 years old, this is the book that he is using as part of his research report. Now, I listened to a little bit of the book so that I knew what he was getting. And then once he was done listening to it for the day, he didn't listen to the entire chapter. He listened to, probably 15, 20 minutes of the book. I asked him some questions on that were covered during the chapter. Okay. How long have ferrets been in North America? Okay. He answered the question accurately, which meant he understood the information. I asked him a couple other questions that were covered in the chapter, in the section of the chapter that he heard. And he answered those questions accurately. Now, my child is going to be able to incorporate in his research report information that other people are getting sitting in a college classroom. What sense would it make for me to deny my child access to that information just because he can't read it for himself? He can understand it, but he can't read it. What he got is just that book word for word. To me, it doesn't make sense to hold my child back in one area because of a weakness in a completely different and unrelated area. And that's why I love audiobooks. Even if my kids weren't dyslexic and they didn't have the vision issues that they have, I would still use audiobooks because most children, I think, regardless of level of giftedness, I think most children can understand at a much, much, much higher level than they can read at. I am convinced of this. I can understand at a much higher level than I can read it. I know when I watch something on Discovery, Health, or a National Geographic show, I can understand it, and I know that if I had been given a book, I would probably be lost. I am an auditory learner in a lot of areas. I even have to talk things out for myself. Like as I'm talking it out, I'm going, Eureka, I got it. And there are lots of people who are auditory learners. There are lots of children who are auditory learners. If your child is an auditory learner, give them audiobooks. It will open up their world to such an amazing amount of information that they would not have otherwise had access to because of their reading level. Even kids that read really well, when I talk to the vision therapy office where my kids do their vision therapy, they talk about so many children are having vision issues because they're early readers, and as they go up in reading level, the font size gets small and their eyes, they are not physically ready to track text at that smaller font, and it's causing eye strain, and it's causing young children to need glasses, to have vision issues, and have headaches and all kind of other stuff because they're ready to consume information at that level. They can read at that level, but they're not physically ready to read at that level. They can think at that level, but they're not physically ready to read at that level. So this is a great way for you to allow your child to think at the level that they're ready to think at, to get information at the level they're ready to get information at, but save the eye strain and save them from the added pressure of trying to perform a reading skill that they're not ready to perform it at. It also allows them to not have too much strain or too much stress from reading, but get access to really great information. So I hope this helps. This is my plea for more people to use audiobooks. If you have any questions, feel free to comment below. This is Dr. J. I'm out. Bye-bye.